All right. My name is Chrissy Blanchard. I am the Certified Global Business Professional here at RBP Chemical Technology. I'm the International Customer Support Manager. And today I'm going to be talking about international trade terms, payment terms, and Incoterms. When entering into an international sales agreement, either import or export, you find yourself agreeing on terms and conditions such as payment terms, Incoterms, and freight terms. Understanding the difference between these terms and how they work will greatly benefit your transaction. Even some of the most experienced members of international trade communities get these terms mixed up, whether you're the importer or exporter. I hope you find this information helpful. I'm going to start talking about international payment terms, as these are pretty easy to comprehend because they are fairly similar to payment terms used in a domestic transaction. However, due to the delicate nature and high risk of international money, additional options are available. So talking about international payment terms, the seller in the transaction is usually who is going to dictate which payment term you're going to use. And some of the options include a cash in advance, which is a very straightforward, usually done via wire transfer, and the risk is primarily on the buyer in this case. There's also a documentary collections payment term. This is a transaction where the exporter will entrust the collection of payment to their bank, and it involves the actual transfer of documents with the import and export. So if that documentation does not fly through in accordance to a contract, you may not get paid. Another option is a letter of credit. This is a document sent from a bank that guarantees that the seller will receive payment from the buyer on time, in full, based on the fulfillment agreements. These come at a fee, and they do require a significant amount of documentation, but it could be a good resource for a very high value order. Another option is an open account. This is, again, is pretty straightforward. You find this mostly in domestic sales, and you can negotiate different types of payment lengths, such as like net 30 or net 90. You can set those open account payment terms based on delivery time. So if you want to do like a net 30 on an invoice or net 30 at time of export out of the US, you can do a net 30 upon arrival at destination port. Again, these are just different variable options you have using open account. And lastly is consignment. This would be the most highest risk option for a seller because basically you're not guaranteed any sort of payment of goods until after the delivery, and usually even after the usage of material. So this would put a lot of trust in your partner or your customer to even consider this method. This diagram just sort of outlines the least secure to most secure methods of payment. So kind of going with the seller, RBP, if we're the seller, the least secure on our end is going to be the consignment, and then the most secure is going to be in the cash in advance side. And then to flip that for the buyer, it's going to be least secure for them cash in advance and most for them on the consignment. This will just give you a good visualization of that versus to see how it works for the importer versus the exporter. Next, I'm going to talk about Incoterms. Incoterms is short for International Commercial Terms, and they're used worldwide to define the responsibilities and risks for both the buyer and the seller in any international transaction. They are modified every 10 years. And so in this case, we're looking at Incoterms 2020. That means the last revision of these happened in 2020. The next one will be set for 2030. These also can be referred to as freight terms, but not to be taken exactly in the same language that we use domestically. And again, this is just defining the risks and responsibilities. And you're looking at who's going to arrange for the logistics, who's going to pay for it, and then at what point from point A to point B between the seller and the buyer does the title or the ownership of goods transfer. And typically the buyer is going to be the party that has more say with Incoterms as far as where they want to fall on the chart. This slide is a Incoterms transfer of risk chart. If you go to Google, you will find a plethora of these and many different various forms, shapes, colors, and whatnot. And this just outlines the risks as you go from the left to the right. The left is the seller, and the green represents the amount of risk that the seller has as they transfer the risk going down the INCOterm. So an X works, for an example, the very top one would be very least risk for the seller, most risk for the customer because they're arranging for everything. Freight terms correlate with INCOterms, again, defining who is arranging and paying for the logistics. So domestic, you've got a prepaid or collect situation, maybe a third party option with methods of ground or air. But with international, as you saw, we've got 11 different options. And it's because we've got methods of not just ground, which would be rail or truck for our space where we share borders, such as Canada and Mexico. But everywhere else, you're talking about air and ocean. And because you've got so many different points along the way, which is shown in this next chart, you'll see why there are so many different choices other than just prepaid, collect, third party. You've got different stops. You've got so many different areas of transfer on both sides of the map, whether it's origin here, United States, or at destination on the other side of the pond. There's several different stops. So this definitely outlines why it can be so complicated. So in summary, with all these different terms that you need to consider in an international transaction, the first thing you want to do is you're going to set your payment terms. Again, this is going to be done more so by the seller. And once you do decide how you're going to get paid for the transaction, then you discuss INCOterms. Then again, once you know who is taking responsibility of what during the export import process, you're pretty much ready to do business. You can process the order, arrange for your logistics, and hopefully both the buyer and seller are happy in the transaction. And, you know, there is no one size fits all method for this. You got to do what works best for you, your business, and what works best for your particular customer. And if anybody has any questions, here's my direct contact information. Again, my name is Chrissy Blanchard, and I'm the International Customer Support Manager at RBP. And I can be reached at cblanchard@rbpchemical.net or at area code 414-258-0911, extension 102.